Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Kardec Radio, where we're here to nourish our souls. I'm Norah, the host of this program, Thoughts by Joanna Angelis, through Divaldo Franco. And this beautiful book is amazing. Love the exercises and the power of a small message because we can take it to another level, cross-referencing material. Most importantly, friends, is to relate it to ourselves, right? Friends, I would like to take a couple of seconds to apologize if I have a slight lisp. I'm working on aligning the jaws, and in the meantime, they've had to do some procedures. A couple of weeks, I will be like this, but sooner than later, dear friends, it will be a little bit easier. So, thank you so much for your understanding. And of course, everything is pretty much on the slide. So, it will be easy to continue with this lesson that way, friends. And speaking of the lesson, well, we're still with forgiveness. And it's so interesting because it's been several lessons that are put next to each other and they're about forgiveness. And it's so beautiful because I mean this is something that we can never stop learning, right? Because we know how complex relationships can be, right? Um, we're all intermingling and socializing and communicating, and we all have different roles, and it's bound to happen where we are hurt, or we too might be the ones that hurt others. And so, forgiveness is something that is relatively current, right? It's something that we have to deal with um, constantly. But I think that it is something that really helps us align ourselves, right? And we're going to see through Joanna's messages how something that an event that can becomes of pain or detrimental is really an opportunity for us to go above and build beautiful feelings of love, resiliency, right, through forgiveness and so many other things. Joanna through Divaldo said, according to depth psychology, forgiveness entails overcoming feelings of retaliation, vengeance, and hatred through the perfect alignment with one's higher purpose, no longer consenting to be hurt by the painful events intrinsic to interpersonal relationships. We know forgiveness is conscious choice, right? It's not about giving consent to be and right to be hurt by actions of others. So it's really about ourselves. It is a decision to rise above the painful events and to connect with a deeper, more profound sense of self. By doing so, we free ourselves from the chains of resentment and open the door to true inner peace and growth. So it's like letting go and not worrying about what the other person did to us, right? Because we cannot judge that. Instead, focusing on what we can do. And forgiveness is one of those power choices, right? And those powers that we can have in our lives for us, right? Because when we forgive, we're not going to condone the wrongs done to us, right? Instead, we're reclaiming our power. So when we understand that this is not a message of Joanna saying, oh, it's okay, we're her. No, 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 right? If we're in a toxic situation, we have to make those choices sometimes to leave, etc., right? But when we are outside of that, right? When we are in a place of what do I do when someone hurts me, we kind of need to focus on our higher purpose and let those negative emotions that weigh us down go. And it's not easy. And it requires courage, it requires strength. And we know courage and strength cannot be downloaded by an app. It cannot be bought through a drive-through or Amazon. It is something that we have to work towards, right? But if we keep going, if we insist and we know it's temporary, we can keep working with ourselves, right? The rewards are immense. Love this idea, very poetic, right? A heart unburdened by anger, a mind clear of bitterness, and a soul aligned with its true purpose. So let's think about this, right? The rewards. Friends, in heaven and hell, chapter 2, we have examples of happy spirits, right? These are spirits that have crossed, right? And they leave beautiful messages. And Mademoiselle Emma left a beautiful message, right? In the Spiritus Center of Haver on July 30th, 1863. As we are reading this message, how does this relate to forgiveness? How can I learn from this? So when something comes into my life, I can apply it. So let's read it and then we'll talk about it. Those who suffer upon the earth are rewarded in the other life. For God is all justice and mercy for those who suffer on earth. The happiness granted to them in the spirit world is so pure, their felicity so perfect, that none would shrink from suffering or from death if it were possible for them to penetrate the designs of the Creator. The earth is the scene of trials that are often very severe and of sorrows that are often terribly intense. But let those who are thus tried be resigned to the infliction of the suffering. Let those bow before the will of God, who mercifully calls upon them to bear a heavy load. When they are summoned back into God's presence after great suffering, they will see in this other life how insignificant were those pains and troubles of the earthly life in comparison with the reward which is reserved for them. If no complaint, no murmuring, have found access to their hearts. Very young have I quitted on earth. God has forgiven me and has granted me the life of those who have respected God's ordination. Adore God in all things. Love God with all your heart, and above all, pray to God with unwavering confidence. For prayer in your material life of suffering upon the earth is your true support, your hope, and your safety. Wow. Friends, before we even just go into this, if anything, I'm already thinking like, gosh, this is a happy spirit. And she's talking about suffering, right? So that means it's just part of the earth experience, right? And we can already start putting suffering could be one part would be those relationships, right? They can come and hurt us or a situation, an event. And love this message because a lot of parts of this message is really to rise above, right? It wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't like, oh, it was really to resign, right? To understand the things that we have control over. And beautifully, as she ends, to pray, right? So we can see through Emma's message related to forgiveness, the acceptance and resignation, the trust in divine justice, prayer support, very important, purity and felicity, and the spiritual reward, right? So she encouraged, right? Her message encourages those who suffer, which is all of us, to be resigned to the suffering, understanding it as a part of a divine plan. So similarly, forgiveness requires acceptance of the hurt and pain, seeing it as a part of a larger journey rather than holding on to that resentment and anger, right? Learning what is the purpose of this, right, situation, and rising above and seeing how it's supposed to help me. Another point that we see through Mademoiselle Emma's message is to trust in the divine justice. So this text speaks to us of a perfect justice and mercy from God to those who suffer, which is all of us, friends. So forgiveness involves trusting justice, whether divine or karmic, will prevail, and that holding on to vengeance does not contribute to this justice, right? How many times we see movies, right? It's all like they make the protagonist so cool because somehow he or she got vengeance, but we know at the end of the day, if we compare a movie like that to a movie where the main character, right, ends up forgiving and moving on, there's just so much power to that, right? And understanding that justice is not within our hands, right? But that God is about this, right? The prayer and support, which we see is it's just part, right? Of life. It emphasizes prayer as a support to the material life of suffering, which we read. Similarly, in the process of forgiveness, prayer, meditation can be powerful tools to seek strength and guidance, right? Helping to align oneself with higher purpose and divine will. I mean, I can think of many, a recent situation that I had with a particular person. Oh my gosh, it was hard. And I kept praying. I said, okay, no, gotta keep praying, for that forgiveness. Pray for forgiveness, pray for forgiveness, meditate for forgiveness. It was so powerful. It is powerful, friends. Another thing that we see, right, that Mademoiselle Emma mentions purity and felicity. The happiness described in the spirit world for those who endure suffering parallels the inner peace and emotional freedom that comes from forgiving others. Both concepts highlight the purity and joy that can be achieved when one overcomes earthly pains and resentment. So it not only means when we cross, but it's also in reference to like life here, right? Living a lot lighter and enjoying that emotional freedom. And lastly, the spiritual reward. So Emma's passage mentions, right, or her message mentions the ultimate reward in the spirit world for those who endure suffering without complaining. Forgiveness can be seen as a path to spiritual growth and inner peace, offering its own rewards, again, by freeing the soul from burdens of anger and hatred. My gosh, so much freedom. And we see that it's all our choices, right? So this beautiful message by the Spirit, Mademoiselle Emma. We thank you so much. And we see how powerful it is to rise above, right? In other words, aligning ourselves to this higher purpose, we can transform our pain into wisdom, our suffering into strength, and our heart into healing, friends. That is today's message. Beautiful, right? Let's try to think about this when we are in difficult situations. Let's go through all the emotions, and it's okay to feel, right? We are going to. But at the end of the day, after I process the hurt, right, the deception that we all have, what am I going to do with that? And another thing, we've all also hurt others. Wouldn't we want forgiveness, right? So let's think about all of this. And thank you so much for today's lesson. Until next week, same place, same time, dear friends. And let us remember to tune in to other programs here at Kardec Radio, where we're always nourishing ourselves. Bye, friends.